Man, it's Christmas, isn't it? Fantastic job, choir and orchestra. Thank you for helping us make that transition from, I mean, it's Thanksgiving weekend, and I don't know about you. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving meal. We did. We had a great Thanksgiving meal. We had some family over. We had some friends over, and it was fantastic. I don't know about your Thanksgiving meals. You know, expectations and meals this time of year, they're never quite what we think they're going to be. Is that true for you? I mean, you have all these gals who work so hard and everybody works so hard, but then they just don't quite work out the way you want. None of our families are perfect. I want to show you as we transition from Thanksgiving to Christmas, I want you to see a Thanksgiving meal. You will recognize this family. I'm taking a little liberty today since it's Thanksgiving week. This is a little longer video than I'll show you one about a minute long. This one's a little over 2 minutes. It's a dysfunctional family. Your family's dysfunctional too. Let me help you with that. And so is mine. This is a family from Thanksgiving meal from Everybody Loves Raymond. And Marie, the mother-in-law, is on a diet, and so she has cooked a tofu turkey. And this is the clip of them enjoying their tofu turkey. Watch. In one of the scenes in that show, Deborah says to Raymond, "If my parents burned down an orphanage on Christmas Day, they still wouldn't be as bad as your parents." We all have dysfunctional families. I'm going to read you, as we talk about hope and the hope of Christmas, a Christmas passage, but we don't always think of this as a Christmas passage. It's one we normally just skip over because we like talking about Mary and Joseph and the baby and the manger in Bethlehem. But I want to read you from Matthew chapter 1, and you might say, where's the hope in this chapter? Stay with me. Now, stay with me for just a moment because this gets a little repetitive. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm going to read most of the first 17 verses. Listen to what it says. The record of the genealogy of Jesus the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Abraham was the father of Isaac, Isaac the father of Jacob, and Jacob the father of Judah and his brothers. Judah was the father of Perez and Zerah by Tamar. Perez was the father of Hezron, and Hezron the father of Ram. Ram was the father of Amminadab, Amminadab the father of Nahshon, and Nahshon the father of Salmon. Salmon was the father of Boaz by Rahab. Boaz was the father of Obed by Ruth, and Obed the father of Jesse. Jesse was the father of David the king. David was the father of Solomon by Bathsheba, who had been the wife of Uriah. Now, I want to read you that last verse, that's from NASB. Let me read it to you from NIV 84. I think it's a little closer to what the verse actually says. David was the father of Solomon, whose mother had been Uriah's wife. If you notice, it doesn't mention Bathsheba's name. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. Solomon was the father of Rehoboam, Rehoboam the father of Abijah, and Abijah the father of Asa. Asa was the father of Jehoshaphat, Jehoshaphat the father of Joram, and Joram the father of Uzziah. Stay with me. Uzziah was the father of Jotham, Jotham the father of Ahaz, and Ahaz the father of Hezekiah. Hezekiah was the father of Manasseh, Manasseh the father of Ammon, and Ammon the father of Josiah. And on the genealogy goes all the way down to verse 15. Eliab was the father of Eleazar, Eleazar the father of Mathan, Mathan the father of Jacob. Jacob was the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary, by whom Jesus was born, who is called the Messiah. One writer said about this section of Scripture, it's like doing a review of the phone book. Great cast of characters, weak plot. But he's wrong. It's not a weak plot at all when you begin to look at the lives of these people. In the ancient Jewish world, the genealogy was everything. And so here's the first major point today, why the genealogy matters. Your genealogy was your resume. It was your identity. It was your legitimacy during this time. And so when Caesar Augustus called for the census, Joseph and Mary knew where they had to go. They had to go to Joseph's hometown in Bethlehem. He knew it because of his genealogy. Before the Christmas story gets to the angels and to Bethlehem and to Mary and Joseph, it begins with this genealogy, this family tree, and this family tree is full of all kinds of scandal and all kinds of brokenness. this family tree is not that unlike yours and mine. Because you dig deep enough into any family tree, you're going to find brokenness and dysfunction. Why this genealogy matters? 3 points real quick on this. Number one, the genealogy establishes Jesus as the son of David. He opens in verse 1, Matthew opens in verse 1, the record of the genealogy of Jesus, the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Now, to every Jewish reader, that would have shouted one thing: this person has the right to be the king. He is the son of David. God had promised David a descendant on his throne forever in 2 Samuel chapter 7. And if Jesus wasn't descended from David, then he wasn't the Messiah. He wasn't the king. But Matthew points out clearly that he was descended from David. Jesus isn't just a teacher who came to teach us things. He is the rightful king. And so the genealogy establishes Jesus as the son of David. Here's the second thing. The genealogy places Jesus in human history. He entered history through a particular family at a particular time, at a particular moment in history. The genealogy makes it plain that this story isn't fiction. It isn't made up. Jesus came in time and space. This is real history. Paul says it beautifully in the verse Chris read at the lighting of the candle a few moments ago from Galatians chapter 4. But when the fullness of the time came, God sent forth his son. At just the right time in history, at just the right moment, God sent his son, sent Jesus. The world was prepared. The world was waiting. The Jews were ready. The Romans were ready. The Greeks were ready. The Persians were ready, all looking for something, some event to change the world in which they lived. Jesus came to a world looking for hope. But here's a third thing about the genealogy, and this is the hope for you and for me today. The genealogy is a chronicle of grace. It's not just a list of superheroes. In fact, I want to walk through a few of these names, and you'll see there's not a superhero in the bunch. First, it's a hall of infamous men. And by the way, infamous doesn't mean famous. It means that there's some bad quality in their life, something that's not good. And it's a hall of infamous men. Although Abraham did a wonderful thing, that he believed God and he obeyed God and he followed, Abraham also had some scandal in his life and some lies in his life, as did Isaac, who followed in his dad's footsteps. Jacob was a cheater and a deceiver. Judah was guilty of gross sexual sin. David committed adultery and murder. Solomon drifted into idolatry and sensuality, and Manasseh is listed there. He was probably the most evil king ever in the history of God's people, if you will, and he was guilty of all kind of idolatry and all sorts of things. These are the men that God chose to be in his family tree. They're in the lineage, the genealogy of Jesus. But it's also a hall of surprising women. Matthew breaks with tradition and he mentions 4 women in this genealogy. The men are messed up, but the women also have issues of their own. They're quite surprising, if you will. Tamar is listed. You know her story. It's found in Genesis chapter 38. She was the daughter-in-law of Judah, who was the son of Jacob and the grandson of Abraham. And I won't go into all the details of the story, but Tamar's husband died, and she hatched a scheme to cause her father-in-law, Judah, to sleep with her. And she became pregnant with twin boys, Perez and Zerah. And when she confronted Judah with the truth, he said rightly, "She is more righteous than I." Now, whatever you can say about Judah, and there's a lot of bad things you can say about Judah, you can't make Tamar look good. Not really, even though he said she's more righteous than I. That might have been true, but she certainly was not righteous. And in the story, we encounter all kinds of human sinfulness and deceit and heartache and hurt and incredible family dysfunction. It's amazing that people like Judah and Tamar are in the genealogy of the Messiah. And then there's Rahab. Many of us know something about her. In fact, when we hear her name, we often think of her, the phrase about her, Rahab the harlot, or Rahab the prostitute. You wouldn't think she'd have much to do with the genealogy of Jesus, but she certainly does. Her story is tied to that incredible story of Jericho and the walls coming down, and when Joshua spent the spies into Jericho, she protected them, she hid them, and she lowered them out a window to protect them so when the invasion took place, she wouldn't be killed in the invasion. That's the picture of what went on with her. It was a great story with a lot of lessons, but don't miss the fact that even though she helped God's people in that battle, she was a prostitute. That's who she was. That's what she did. That was her trade. But is there anything good we can say about her? Yeah, there's a lot of good we can say about her. She became a believer. She believed in God, and she trusted God ultimately. And how do we know? Because Hebrews 11 tells us that she did. It says, by faith, Rahab. She became a believer, this woman who had been a prostitute. And when the invasion of Jericho came, she was spared. And Rahab the prostitute became the great-great-grandmother of King David. She made the list, and she's part of Jesus' family tree. Isn't that amazing? Tamar and Rahab, and then there's Ruth also in the family tree. As it relates to this tree, the most significant thing about her was she wasn't a Jew. She was from Moab. And the book that bears her name tells about the romance that blossomed between her and Boaz the Israelite. They were a very unlikely couple in God's providence. They were brought together. They had a son named Obed, who had a son named Jesse, who had a son named David, making Ruth David's great-grandmother. Isn't that incredible? How a person from a land hated from Moab became a part of Jesus' family tree. One of the writers says about Ruth that it proves that God accepts outsiders. And then the fourth woman in this family tree is Bathsheba. Now you know the story of David and Bathsheba, so I won't even go into detail of the story itself. But we all know about it. We know that before the story was done, that it was a story of a royal cover-up, of adultery, of murder, of dysfunction of the highest order, if you will. And eventually, after Uriah had been killed, Bathsheba married David. They had another son. His name was Solomon, the wisest man who ever lived. And there's dirt all over this story. It's a real mess. Bathsheba made the family tree of the Messiah. Matthew, by the way, I mentioned this when I read the passage earlier. Matthew really doesn't even say her name. I think because he wants us to feel the weight of David's sin. King David, a man with a heart after God, guilty of adultery and guilty of murder. But there is Bathsheba nonetheless in the family tree of the Messiah. Isn't that incredible? Now, here's the point of the message this morning. Why does God include these stories? Why are these stories in the family tree of Jesus? The first one's a little convicting for some of us that have been in the church our whole lives. And I've told you before, Josie jokes that my family's Baptist all the way back to Noah. And so we can start thinking we're all that. But the first reason I think that God includes these stories is to put self-righteous people in their place. The Pharisees made a big deal out of lineage and genealogies. And they thought they were all that. But think about the lineage, think about the genealogy of Jesus. Just in the people we've looked at. The men that we've looked at just briefly and said a sentence about each, and the women we've looked at and talked about just for a second. Prostitutes, adulterers, liars, murderers, outsiders, idolaters, foreigners. You can throw in deceivers. You can just think of any sin you want to name, and we'll find them in that family tree somewhere. And the message is pretty clear for some of us. We need to stop trusting in our family tree. Stop trusting. The hope of Christmas is not found in your lineage. It's not found in your grandparents or your parents or your great-great-grandparents. Our hope is not found there. Because the reality is, we all have messed up families. I have a messed up family. I think I have a great family. I love my family. They're fantastic. But you dig deep enough, and you're going to see my family's messed up. And if I dig deep enough into your family, I'm going to see that your family is messed up too. This genealogy puts self-righteous people in their place. There's no hope found in your genealogy. There's no hope found in my genealogy. It's only in the one who came. But the second reason that God includes these stories is to showcase grace. It showcases grace. Charles Spurgeon said this. Spurgeon said, everything about salvation is simple. Everything about it is sublime. The word sublime means it inspires awe because it's so grand and it's so wonderful. Salvation is so grand and it's so wonderful. And when you think about Christmas, do you see the hope here? Because God is showcasing grace in this genealogy. Every name in that list that I read you magnifies God's grace. If David can be forgiven, I can be forgiven, and you can be forgiven. If Rahab can be redeemed, I can be redeemed, and you can be redeemed. If Tamar can be included in the genealogy of Jesus, you can be included, and I can be included. If Ruth can be embraced, you can be embraced, and I can be embraced. If Bathsheba can be honored, so can you. If Jacob and Judah can be justified, you can be justified, and I can be justified. Then anyone can be saved. That's the picture. The third reason he includes these stories is to exalt Jesus, not his family tree. When we stop and think about what happened at Christmas, we don't boast in the ancestors of Jesus. There's nothing to boast about in his ancestors. But we do marvel that God came, Emmanuel, God with us, to save a world like this. Isn't it amazing? Do you see the hope in that? That God came to save a world this messed up? Why did Jesus come through a dysfunctional family? Why did he come through a dysfunctional family? Now, I was sitting in my notes, but my first thought is, why did he come through a dysfunctional family? Because there wasn't any other kind to come through. That's all there is. But here's the reason. He came through a dysfunctional family. Because he came for dysfunctional people like us. He came for dysfunctional people like me. And he came for dysfunctional people like you. That's why. We joked about it with Everybody Loves Raymond and the family and all the stuff that's going on. It was pretty cool and it's funny. And maybe you had a Thanksgiving meal not that different. Maybe it was a lot worse in some regards with your family, and maybe you're dreading a Christmas meal with a family that doesn't get along. The reality is, Christmas, Jesus came for dysfunctional people like you and like your family. Secondly, Jesus came to transform broken stories. He came to transform stories like Tamar's and Rahab's and Ruth's and Bathsheba's and David's and Judah's. He came to transform broken stories. I want you to look at this quote from Chuck Swindoll. This is a wonderful quote. He says, God specializes in using the unlikely to accomplish the unforgettable. Isn't that great? God specializes in using the unlikely to accomplish the unforgettable. Third reason he came through a dysfunctional family is the gospel that Christmas ushered in is for sinners like my family and sinners like your family. That's why he came like that. The hope that Christmas brings, let me just kind of bring this into just a capsule to kind of close it. Here's the hope that Christmas brings. Your past doesn't disqualify you. Every one of us came today with different backgrounds, different families. Some of us came filled with joy. Some of us came with heartache. Some of us came with loneliness or emptiness. Your past does not disqualify you. That's number one. Number two, your family story can't stop God's plan. Whatever happened in your family before today can't stop God's plan in your life if you will come to him and open your heart to him. The third thing is God works through ordinary, messed up people like you and like me. Isn't that great? That's the hope of this genealogy of Christmas, that God works through ordinary people like us. You see it all through Scripture. And then the last thing, and this kind of really brings the whole thing into a bow. Jesus came and made a way for you to be a part of his family. No matter what family we come from, God makes a way for us to be a part of his family. In John chapter 1, verse 12, it says, "Yet to all who received him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God." See, it doesn't matter what family we come from. The reality is, what matters is, have we become a part of God's family through Jesus Christ, Emmanuel, God with us. He said, if you will believe in me, if you will believe that he is the Son of David, the King, the Messiah, that he came and lived that perfect life, came as a babe in a manger, but he came to die, and he went to the cross and carried your sin to the cross with him and my sin to the cross with him, and he paid for it with his body, with his blood. If we will believe in him, put our full weight on him and trust in him and what he's done on our behalf, open our heart to him and receive him, if you will, make of our hearts a home for him, and receive him, he says, he gives you the right to become his child. And you become a part of his family. What a beautiful picture. I'm going to leave you with one quote. That's a great synopsis of this. Tim Keller said this: Christmas is the most unsentimental way of saying you are so lost that nothing less than the death of the Son of God could save you, yet so loved that he was glad to do it. That's how loved you are. The hope of Christmas is that regardless of our past, Jesus has come and made a way for us to become a part of his family. And I pray that today, if you've never opened your heart to him, believed in him, and received him, like that verse we read a moment ago says, that this will be that moment for you. If you know him, and our next song and our time of invitation, I'm going to ask you just to meditate on the reality that as messed up as we are, as dysfunctional as we can be, that God loves us so much, he sent Jesus. He sent Jesus to come and make us right, to make us a part of his family, and to give us life.